This might seem like a silly question, but would you let someone loose in your lab who'd had no training on the equipment? Or send someone to an FDA meeting who didn't know the regulations? Or maybe put your finances in the hands of a CFO with no accounting qualifications? No? Then why are you allowing people to decide who works at your company without training them on how to effectively interview and hire people? The most important factor in creating a brilliant culture is having the right people on the bus, so you should make sure your team are trained to select them. Most managers, especially those in small companies, have had no interview training whatsoever. Among those who have, it's usually been a long time since they refreshed their knowledge and approach. And the impact of this is significant. In research conducted by CareerBuilder, 75% of employers admit that they've hired the wrong person, with inadequate interview skills being a major contributor to that fact. And a 2022 study conducted by LinkedIn found that 69% of talent professionals believe hiring suffers due to poorly trained interviewers. Alongside this lack of training, the level of experience on interview panels varies wildly. In my own work at Singular, I clearly remember trying to facilitate a hiring discussion between a COO and VP of research at one biotech company. The COO had previously run a major division of a pharma company with a team of more than 10,000 people around the world, while the VP of research had supervised a handful of PhD students before joining the company. And while on the surface they were violently disagreeing about a particular candidate, in reality they had the same opinion. Their frames of reference were just so different that they really struggled to communicate their view to each other. And with the cost of a bad hire being in the tens or even sometimes hundreds of thousands of pounds, not to mention the wasted time, effort, energy, damage to morale and reduced productivity, it's worth making sure that your hiring team have the basic tools that they need to make good decisions. Interviewing is, after all, a skill. Asking good questions takes practice. Evaluating candidates' responses can be a complex and nuanced task. Choosing the best candidate, the one most likely to succeed, from a group of highly qualified candidates can test even the most experienced executives. And the stakes are high. It's not just the cost, which, as we've mentioned, is substantial in itself. Hiring a candidate who doesn't work out is embarrassing for the person who brings them in. So interviewers hesitate, play it safe, and delay their decision until they're left in a position where the pressure to hire gets so intense that they make a suboptimal decision. Now, there are several elements of interviewing that you could train your team in, many of which will improve their performance. But I'll focus here on the three that will make the biggest difference: competency-based questions, structured interviews, and unconscious bias. Competency-based questions are the cornerstone of effective interviewing. And in tomorrow's video, I'm going to dive into these in much greater detail. But the essence is this: what people tell you they will do is highly unreliable. Human behavior tends to run on established patterns. So the best indicator of how someone will act in the future is how they've behaved in the past. It's not a perfect equation, and of course people can change how they operate, but in the majority of cases, it's a principle that holds true. So your interview questions should be focused on gathering evidence of the competencies you're trying to assess from past behavior. When has the candidate demonstrated an ability to deliver in challenging circumstances, for an example? What's a good example of a time they've helped a colleague with a difficult situation? And can they tell you about a time that they've been able to solve an intractable problem that nobody else could crack? It's really important to get specific examples rather than generalizations, and then to dig into the details. How did they approach the specific situation? Why did they approach it in that way? And what was the result? As should be evident, asking these kinds of questions takes some preparation and practice, so teaching the concept and giving lots of opportunities for repetition through role-playing are key steps to take in developing these skills in your team. Once they've mastered competency-based questioning, the next topic to cover is how those questions fit into structured interviews. Now, I've recorded a whole video on structured interviews called Your Hiring Process is Broken, so go and watch that if you want more on them. But in short, they're twice as effective as unstructured interviews at predicting in-job performance. And the basics are gathering evidence through competency-based questions, as we've already discussed, scoring that evidence on a fixed scale, asking the same questions to each candidate, and then making an informed, more objective decision by calculating each individual's overall score to make a hiring decision. Interviewers must be able to defend their scoring in a structured feedback meeting, so detailed notes are crucial, and different members of the panel can interview on different competencies, which saves time and reduces repetition for candidates. And finally, it's extremely important that your interview group are made aware of the dangers of unconscious bias and have developed some tools to counteract it. Now, we all carry bias, and this can produce a familiarity effect when we encounter candidates that we have something in common with. Now, crucially, that doesn't have to be something related to the job. It could be coming from the same town, attending the same university, or even wearing the same color shirt. But this familiarity effect influences our opinions, and so we start to favor those who induce it, looking for positive reinforcement of our instinctive opinion of them. Early judgments are another form of unconscious bias that commonly occur. So a good answer to a technical question in the first interview or a poor piece of communication early on can result in what's called a halo and horns effect, where we look more positively at all attributes of those with the halo and negatively regard every element of those with the horns. These are challenging biases to overcome, but the first step is awareness and acknowledgement. Tackling unconscious bias will help you to build more diverse teams, it'll improve candidate experience in your hiring process, and it will also help you avoid legal action based on discrimination. And one other action you can take to improve your hiring success is to start keeping track of who the most effective interviewers in your business are. Like anything else, some people will be better at hiring than others. So it makes sense to deploy those with a flair for interviewing more regularly in your recruitment efforts. Keep a note of the decisions each member of the panel makes on each candidate you interview and compare them over time with the performance and retention of the people you end up hiring. If someone shows an above average ability to pick a winner, get them involved in as many of your interview processes as possible.